এক্ষুনি সব জয়েন করে দেবে বলে। Okay, who has joined? Shorab. Shorab, you can hear, right? Shorab, you can hear?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, very good. Okay, Shubham has also joined. And Sridhar Mohanty.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Manik Rai. Manik Rai. Okay, good. So as you know, these lectures will be recorded, so you will be able to see the video lectures later on also. So if you miss something in the class, so you don't need to worry. Everything will be recorded.
Okay, sir.
The board is visible to you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can see this.
Yes, but it would be nice if you could write a little bigger.
Okay.
So it is a bit bloody.
ওকে তাহলে এটাকে একটু যদি একটু বেশি ফোকাস যদি করা যায় ফোকাস করাই বড় করে দিতে ভালো আমরা আরো ক্যামেরা সহ কাছাকাছি করলে সেক্ষেত্রে ইজি হবে Now you can see this?
Yes, sir. It is okay.
Okay, good. How many students are there in this class? 13 students, is it?
Sir, 12 students.
12, okay, 12. So all of you have joined? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Only 9 are there. 3 is there. Three people, sir.
And other 3 will not join?
10 students are there right now.
Okay. 9 students.
Oh, 9 students. Yes.
Yes, sir. তাহলে অন করে দাও রেকর্ড অন আছে স্টার্ট ওকে সো এটাকে আমি সরালাম So as you know, let us start with it. So good morning everyone. So let us start this course. This is a course on advanced quantum mechanics, as you know, and the things that will be taught in this course are path integral approach to quantum mechanics. This is the first thing that will be taught in this course. So this will be the first thing that will be taught in this course, path integral approach to quantum mechanics. And then you will learn something about Dirac equation, relativistic quantum mechanics. That will be taught by Professor Arjun Mojumdar in this course later on. I shall be mainly teaching you path integrals in quantum mechanics, and if I have some time, once I finish the course on the lectures on path integrals, then maybe I can tell you something more about some other things like field quantization, a little bit introductory field quantization, non-relativistic field theory kind of thing. And so I can do that if I get some time later on. So let us start the course on path integrals in quantum mechanics, and the books that you can read up for this course is the It's a book by Feynman and Gibbs. So that is a very good book, a very nice book where you can get an introduction on a nice comprehensive introduction on path integral approach to quantum mechanics. So Feynman and Gibbs, please note it down. It's a very nice book, and there are several other textbooks also available from where you can read up about path integral formulation. So let us start by introducing what this path integral formulation of quantum mechanics is. So first of all, this path integral formulation of quantum mechanics is basically an alternative formulation of quantum mechanics. You know, you have already learned about the canonical way of doing quantum mechanics, which is by introducing, you have operators. All dynamical variables in quantum mechanics are operators, are Hermitian operators. Dynamical variables means measurables. These are all Hermitian operators. Therefore, you have Qt, you have, this is a Hermitian operator, this is a dynamical variable, this is a position, and you have momentum. So you have operators, Hermitian operators, which represents dynamical variables, and they act on some Hilbert space. This is the mathematical structure of quantum mechanics. They act on some Hilbert space. And not only that, these dynamical variables that you have, these Hermitian operators that you have, they satisfy a commutation relation among themselves. Right? So they satisfy a commutation relation among themselves.
Sir, I can't see the board fully.
You can see this part?
Only P of T is IH cut, not the complete bracket. The left side has been cut.
Okay.
Change the layout, Josh.
Others can see, everyone can see.
Yes, sir.
How
Yes,
to do
sir.
it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, only Joyce can
Yes.
see.
Just rotate the phone. Rotate the phone.
Rotate. Okay.
I think you can see from here up to here, up to this point. You can see.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay. And I see. I
Okay.
think
Yes, sir.
the font
Yes, sir. Now
size.
I can see it.
Very good. I think the font size is also fine, perfect for you. You can see the board clearly now.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. It is perfect.
Okay, very good. So what I was saying is that in the canonical way of formulation of quantum mechanics, you have dynamical variables which are represented by Hermitian operators, and this Q and P, they satisfy the commutation relation. And this commutation relation is nothing but commutator bracket Q hat Pt is basically equal to I h bar, where h bar is the reduced Planck constant, h bar is h by 2 pi. H is the Planck's constant. So this is the canonical structure of quantum mechanics, where operators, dynamical variables represented by Hermitian operators, act on a Hilbert space, and there are acts on states which are there in the Hilbert space, and these states evolve according to the time-dependent Schrodinger equation. This is the canonical way of doing quantum mechanics. And this canonical way of doing quantum mechanics is called the operator approach. This is the operator approach of doing quantum mechanics. But path integral approach is something, is an alternative formulation, and it is something different from this operator approach of doing quantum mechanics. So let's see what these path integrals are. But before doing path integrals, one of the most important thing that one must know in the formulation of path integrals is the notion of a propagator. This is something very important in the path integral formulation of quantum mechanics. You must know what this propagator is. So what this propagator tells us is the following. What is the meaning of this word propagator? It tells us that if you have a wave function at some position qi at time ti, if you have this, then the propagator gives you the wave function at QF TF. So I denote this propagator by K. You can use alternative notations also. It can be represented by U, it can be represented by G, whatever. For the time being, I'm just representing this thing by K. So this will be basically QF, TF, QI, TI, I, QI, DI, DQI. Okay. So what this equation tells us is that given a wave function at psi at QI TI, this object, this is the object, this is the propagator, it gives you the corresponding wave function at QF TF. It gives you the final wave function. And how? You integrate over all possible QIs. And then that will give you the wave function at QF TF. So this is this
So I
object.
have a question.
Huh?
Can I interrupt, please?
Who is this person?
Hello. Sorry.
Yes, please.
Shouldn't the propagator be simply a function of Q's and T's, and the limit should go from QI to QF?
Once more, please.
Shouldn't the propagator K
Yes.
itself be a function of Q's and T's, only Q and T only, and rather the limits will go from QI to QF in the integration limits, right? Or is it that the propagator?
That is what it is. You can see
Okay.
that. See, the integration is over QI.
Yeah.
The integration is over QI. And QI you integrate from minus infinity to plus infinity, right?
Okay.
This thing, the wave function at QF TF, this is a function of QF and TF. So you are not integrating over QF, right?
I'm confused about something like I understand wave function at Ti and wave function at Tf. That is fine. But how do I understand wave function at Qi and wave function at QF? Aren't those just points?
No. The wave function, no. The wave function must be a function of the position, right? It has to be a function of the position.
Right.
So that is what Q is.
Yes.
That is what Q is. It has to be a function of the position. It is not that it is a function of time only, right? So it is a function of position as well.
Okay, so your QF is not a fixed point.
QF here is a fixed point because you want to find the wave function at the point QF. QF is a fixed point. QI,
Okay. So how do I interpret wave function at a fixed point? I mean, wave function is not something that is at a fixed point, right?
why not? Why not?
Um,
When you solve the
wave function is a function of.
what is this? This is that x is a fixed point. Why not?
Yeah, x. Okay.
See, wave function.
Okay. Yeah, I got it now. It's clear. Yes, sir. Yes, now it is clear.
Wave function has to be a function of some point, right? Otherwise, it has this point x is a fixed point. Why not a fixed point? It has to be a fixed point. Anyway,
Sir, I have a question. Why we are integrating over all the possible paths here? I mean,
I have not integrated over any possible paths. So far, there is no integration of over possible paths. It will come. It will come up. There is no path here. I've just what you see the equation very carefully. Just try to see the equation very carefully.
okay, sir.
This is a wave function at the point Qi and Ti, and this has been integrated over all Qi's.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir,
Who is this?
sir, I am Jarshu.
Yes.
Sir, K is a function multiplied with psi or K is an operator?
Very good question. Very good question. Joyashree, this is a nice question. This is a number. This is an ordinary number. There are no operators here. Psi, is this an operator?
No.
No, this is a function, this is a number.
Hmm.
Okay, this is a number, this is a function, psi wave function. This is a wave function. This is also some function. This is a number, not an operator. This is a nice thing, nice question. This is a number. This is not an operator. And we shall see what this number actually is. What is the physical meaning, or what is the mathematical expression that we are familiar with in a moment. But to see this equation very carefully, it tells us that given a wave function at qi ti, integrate over all possible positions qi. So dqi has been integrated over, and the propagator takes you from that point to another point, qf df. It gives you the wave function at qf df. qf has not been integrated over. That is why, see here, qf, it is not integrated over, therefore the left hand side is also a function of qf. qi has been integrated over, therefore the left hand side is not a function of qi. But ti, what about ti? Ti has not been integrated out, right? So in general, one should actually write this to be like this. This wave function at qf df, it is also a function of ti, but we don't write it. We just keep it silent. We don't write it. But it must be there, right? Because the wave function at a final point should, in principle, depend on your initial condition. What is about the information at time t, right? If you solve the time-dependent Schrodinger equation, then in order to solve a differential equation, you must know the initial condition. What is the value of the wave function at time t is equal to ti? And that comes over here. But we don't write ti explicitly. But definitely, the left-hand side is not a function of qi, because qi has been integrated out from -infinity to +infinity. This object k is called a propagator. Because why it is called a propagator? Because it takes you from this wave function to this wave function by this relation. So it propagates you from one point to another point. That is why it is called a propagator. Okay? And let's see what this propagator is really. Now, you recall that psi qt, you can write this down as the wave function psi qt, you can write this down as the overlap of this ket psi t in the Schrodinger representation with the bra q, right? This you can write. This is the position representation of the wave function, of the state. So if you take a position representation, coordinate representation of the state, by this, we will get this. So these are the state kets. So psi t's are the state kets.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, what is S?
Good. S stands for Schrodinger representation.
Okay.
S stands for Schrodinger representation. You must be familiar with Schrodinger representation, Heisenberg representation, Dirac representation, interaction picture in quantum mechanics. If you are not familiar, it's not a problem, because we shall learn about these things as we move on. So this psi t s is just denotes that we are in the Schrodinger representation. So in the Schrodinger representation, you know that state kets are time dependent and operators are time independent, right? And in the Heisenberg representation, we know it is just the reverse. The operators are time dependent and the state kets are time independent. Okay? But in the Schrodinger representation, state gates are time dependent, but the base gates, these are the base gates with which you take the representation. The base gates are time independent. The base gates are not time dependent in Schrodinger representation. It is only the state gates that are time dependent. So these are the base gates. Okay. Let us now see. All of us know that psi ts, the state gate in the Schrodinger representation, or this gate at a time t, evolves according to this relation. What is this H? This H is Heisenberg representation. So in the Heisenberg representation, the state gates are time independent. The operators are time dependent. And this, they're related by this equation. It is easy to see that psi t, that state gate in the Schrodinger representation and the state gate in the Heisenberg representation, they are the same at time t is equal to 0. At time t is equal to 0, both are same. Both the representations coincide. This is something important. So let us just put this over here. Let us put this equation over here. So I will just write it in this place. This is equal to, I hope you can see this part of the board. So this is basically q exponential this, right? Is this okay? So this, so I've just inserted this equation in this relation, so I get this. But this is nothing but qt. The full thing is now in Heisenberg representation. And what is qt? Qt is related to q in the following way. This is the relation. So this is the state gate, the base gate in the Schrodinger representation. The base gate in the Schrodinger representation is time independent. And this is the base gate in the Heisenberg representation, and base gate in the Heisenberg representation is time dependent. This is something which you must remember. So if you use this equation, also there is a subtlety here. You recall, you see that psi t, it goes like this, e to the power of minus I by h bar like this. But this thing, qt, it is related to q by this relation. There is a plus sign over here. The base gates are related in this way. And therefore you can see that psi qt is basically this, So this is in the Schrodinger representation, and this is in the Heisenberg representation. So this is something very important. You will realize why it is important as we proceed further. Now let us come to this object. Let us see what this object is. So we have just now proved that psi qt is basically this, right? This thing. So let us see what this object is. Psi qf tf, you can write this as, in the Heisenberg representation, like this. Psi qf tf is this. We have just now proved it. Psi qf tf is basically bra qf tf get psi Heisenberg representation. But this thing, this object is equal to this, right? But you can write this object as this is equal to I'm not writing H anymore. I'm just omitting the H. This is basically this thing. Okay. So I've just written this expression in this way. It's just standard quantum mechanics. All of us know. Only thing that you must remember here is that you know the completeness relation this, right? This is the completeness relation satisfied by the position kets, the base kets. But what we have used is, we have used the following relation. This all of us know, but we have used this relation. It is not Q, it is Qt. So this is the base ket in the Heisenberg representation. So you can actually prove that if this holds, then this implies this. If this holds, then this implies this. How to prove that? Let us do the proof first. Let us prove it. It is very simple to show, not difficult, but let us do it. Let us take this expression, dq, this thing, and let us use this equation that I have written down on the board, this relation. So if you take this will give us dq. What is qt? Qt is e to the power of I by Hamiltonian time t q. And what is bra of qt? Bra of qt, if you just reverse it, it will be bra of q e to the power of minus I by h bar Hamiltonian time t. Is this okay? I hope it is okay. So what I have done is I have just substituted qt over here and bra of qt over here. But now you know that integral dq ket q bra q is identity. So use the completeness relation. So this becomes e to the power of I Hamiltonian time t minus I by h bar Hamiltonian time t. We have used this commutation, this completeness relation, and therefore this is equal to 1, identity operator. Therefore, as I mentioned, if this holds, then this also holds. We have proved it just now. Let us now come back to this relation. This was psi qf comma tf is equal to this. This is equal to this because we have just now shown that this is basically this. And now I introduce a complete set of states. This. What is this thing? This thing, and this thing. So I can just take this inside. So this will be equal to integral dqi qf tf qi ti qi. Is it okay? Everyone, is it okay? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay. So what I've done is I've just taken this inside the integral.
It is K.
Now what is this thing?
Psi qi ti.
Very good. This is psi qi here. Let us compare this equation with this equation. This one with this one. So you can immediately see that a qf ef, this which I call the propagator, is basically nothing but qf ef Qi Ti. So what we have shown is that the K that I have introduced earlier is basically equal to this overlap. It's the overlap of ket Qi Ti with bra Qf Pf. So this propagator is basically this thing.
So Saurav, here I have a question.
Yes, please.
The top of the board, right now you've proven the relation of completeness of Qt, right? Qt gets.
Right.
So, will it not be problematic if the Hamiltonian has Q and P within itself? Then how can you write the second line from the top line?
Which one?
The integration dq exponential I h t q and q bar exponential minus I h bar h t, right?
Yes.
What if h is dependent upon like q's and p's? Can we still then use dq and q integral to identity?
Yeah, that can be used. Why not? Why can't you use that?
Because there will be operators involved, maybe q's and p's, and then the integral we can't just pull out.
I understand your point. See, when I introduce this thing,
Yeah.
it's a good question. Sure. It's a nice question. You see, I will answer this question. You are right. This,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But now you are having a problem because I am putting this integral inside, right? This is the problem that you are facing. But that is not a problem. Because this thing that you have,
Yeah. dq.
This is dq, right?
Hmm.
So this will not create a problem. See, this is a very arbitrary form of the Hamiltonian, of this Hamiltonian.
Right.
Now, what you can do is, if you order this is a Hamiltonian operator. Now, if you order this Hamiltonian operator, you can do it by using commutation relations that you have between Q and P. If you order this Hamiltonian, then you can see that you can do this in the following way, that you can use the commutation relation and bring all the Q's on the right hand side.
Okay, are you talking about the normal ordering thing or something like that?
It is not normal ordering. Normal ordering is something different.
Okay.
Normal ordering is that you take all the creation operators to the left of the annihilation operators.
Yeah.
Okay. That will come later on, as you will learn it later. That is important. In field theory, you will learn it
Sir,
later. Actually, let me just answer this question.
Yeah.
So you can take it in that way. And
Yeah.
now what will happen is, see, as far as this is an operator,
Right.
this is an operator. So this will not create any problem because you can always, this is not a function of Q. This is not a function of Q. Q's here, see, this Q is a number. This Q
Okay.
that you have, this is a number, right? Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a number.
Yeah.
This is not an operator.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is a state ket.
Yes. Okay.
So what you can always do, this is an operator. Hamiltonian is an operator, and it is an operator of what? It is an operator of these operators, right?
Yeah. Q's and
Q
P's.
and Pi. So
Yeah.
you can always take it outside the integral, or
Okay.
you can put it inside. These are not numbers. Had these been numbers, then that would have been a problem.
Okay. Let us suppose h is equal to, okay, let us suppose that after doing the exponential thing, we get something like q squared plus p squared, something like that, or anything.
Yes.
And then will not the p square act on the q kets and produce something else, and the whole integral can become messy?
No, you don't need to do it. You just keep it in the operator form. You keep it in the operator form.
Okay.
So what this is an operator. For example, you can take this Hamiltonian. We shall take it later on. You can take it to be like
Yeah.
this. P hat square by 2m plus say B of Q hat.
Yeah. Okay.
Just put it over here.
Okay.
You can take it outside because this is an operator.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I think
Yes. Thank you.
because this is an operator. As a whole, this is an operator.
Yes.
Because take it outside the integral.
Yeah. We can do it.
You can
Yeah.
do it. But
Thanks.
had it been a number, then it would be a problem. Because then it
Yeah,
would be a
yeah.
function of Q. Now it
Yes,
would be
yes.
a problem. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Shoham, you had a question, right? Shoham?
Sir, I was saying that even if it was a number in the first equation dq k cube bra q, that first equation equals to identity. First one. Yeah.
Yes.
Then I can just multiply with an identity in the bracket e to the power iht e to the power minus iht and just reach the second equation in that way. Will it be a problem if q is a number in that case also?
No, that would be a problem because see, that would be a problem. If you just try to multiply it by some number, exponential e to the power of I by h hat, which is, for example, what you are saying is that if I multiply this by e to the power of I by h bar ht, where h is some function of q and p, where q and p are ordinary numbers, are c numbers now, then that would be a problem because this is a function of p and q.
So,
It is a function of q, but q is a number, but then this is not there anymore. That would be a problem.
sir, I am not saying that. I am saying that in the first equation, I multiply with e to the power plus iht and minus iht. Then I can directly reach the second line. I am saying that.
That is true. That you can do, but this is an operator. You have to remember that you are multiplying it by an operator.
Okay. Sir. Yeah.
Then that is true. Absolutely. You multiply here by some operator h hat e to the power of this, and what you are saying is multiplying this here by this.
So then the number problem will not arise. I am saying that.
No, here also there is no number problem because this
Okay.
is an operator. It's an operator. Both way there is no problem.
Okay. I understood. Yes.
There is absolutely no problem here. Both ways there is no problem.
Okay, sir.
You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I think this answers Shourabh's and Shoham's questions. So let us now come back. So what we have proved now in this class is that this propagator is basically equal to this thing. It is the overlap of these two things. Now, let us just do one more thing. Once you have this propagator over here, this is this thing. So what is the physical interpretation of this propagator? The physical interpretation of this propagator is basically that it is the probability amplitude of transition from QI-TI to QF-TF. This overlap, the physical meaning of this is that this is the probability amplitude of transition from QI-TI to QF-TF. Okay? And now let us see how we can further manipulate this expression. So what we have now is this object, right? This is the object that we have, and you can basically write this down as QI-TI. You can write this down as e to the power of I by h bar Hamiltonian into time Ti QI. So this is QI TI. And what is QF TF? This QF e to the power of this. Okay? We have just used those relations that we have just now shown, that relation on the right hand side of the board. And this I can write it down as QF exponential TF minus TI QI. And TF minus TI, what I will do is, I will set this TF to be equal to capital T and TI, the initial time, to be 0. Therefore, what this becomes, what this is basically capital T. So this propagator that we have, which is the probability amplitude of transition from QI TI to QF TF, is basically nothing but QF e to the power of minus I by h bar Hamiltonian capital T QI. The capital T is basically TF minus TI. So this is the thing that we have. Okay?
Sir, I have one more question.
Yes.
You're talking about transition, probability of transition from QI TI to QF TF.
Yes.
Maybe this is a silly question to ask, but what is transitioning? I mean,
Oh, well,
yeah.
it's the probability amplitude of transition from the position QI TI, probability
Yes.
amplitude of transition of the particle from the position QI TI to
Yeah.
QF.
Okay.
It will be clear in a moment. Just wait for a moment, it will be clear. Okay? So, I'll just rub this part of the board. This is not required now. So, another thing that I would like to mention at this point, you know the relation between QT and Q. This I have just now written it down. One more thing I just want to tell you before I proceed further is the following. You know that the commutation relation between QP is I H bar. These are operators in the Schrodinger representation. These are time independent. Q, there is no time dependence here. It's no time dependence here. Commutation relation is I H bar. Now, if this is true, then you can show that U hat P, V hat P is also equal to I H bar. This is also true. Why? You can show it immediately. These are operators in the Heisenberg representation. They obey the Heisenberg equations of motion. They are time dependent. They also have this commutation relation, and it is very easy to show. Q hat Q is basically Q. Similarly, Q hat T acting on QT is also equal to Q QT. This can be shown immediately because QT is basically, this part is basically e to the power of I by h bar Hamiltonian time T Q, and this is the operator in the Heisenberg representation. It is time dependent. Therefore, you can write this down as any operator in the Heisenberg representation is related to the corresponding operator in the Schrodinger representation in this power of I by h bar Hamiltonian time T U hat exponential time. Okay, so This thing is basically this thing, and Qt is basically this thing. So this and this is identity, right? This is identity. Now Q hat acts on Q, and that gives you Q. So this thing is basically equal to exponential I by h bar Hamiltonian time t. Q hat acting on Q, but that is basically this thing. Q, this Q is a number, Q. But this is a number, I can take it this side also. Exponential this thing, this is an operator. This acting on Q gives you Qt. So this is equal to Q. So this is also something that you should just keep in your record, that if Q hat acts on Q, this is the relation, this is the eigenvalue equation, then Q hat T acting on Qt is also equal to Q Qt. You can show this. It's very clean. Where Q hat T is related to Q in this way. So we have all the necessary things that we require, all the background material that we require to proceed further. So let us now come to, again, focus on this propagator. Let us focus on this propagator. So here, what the path integral approach to, you will understand in a moment what is the difference between the path integral formulation of quantum mechanics with the standard canonical approach of doing quantum mechanics. The canonical approach is basically the operator approach of doing quantum mechanics, where you have commutation relations and the operators acts on states in the Hilbert space, and these states evolve by the Schrodinger equation according to the time-dependent Schrodinger equation. This is the operator approach. And the path integral formulation is basically a sum over paths, all possible paths. And you will see why the sum over paths comes into the picture. And it is also distinctly different from the operatorial approach, because in the path integral approach, as we shall see now, we don't work with operators at all. We don't work with operators at all. So this is some advantage of the path integral formulation of doing quantum mechanics, because here you don't work with operators at all. Everything, whatever things that you have in your hand are just numbers. These are not operators, and you will see why. So let us take this thing. This is the propagator, and let us just use the completeness relation that we have shown. What we shall do is, for the time being, for just today, let us do a very simple small exercise before going into path integral proper. Let us do the following. You have QF, TF, QI, TF. So I write QF, TF over here, and I introduce something like DQ. And what is this? I can always do that. I can always do this. Why? Because this thing is identity, right? You can always do that. It's a completeness relation. You can always insert identities, as many identities as you want. So you have something like this. And now, what is this expression? So you have QFTF, QT. So this I can write it down as, now I can take this inside the integral. Mind you, I am not writing this explicitly, but whenever I introduce a complete set of states, you should always remember that this is being integrated from minus infinity to plus infinity. This is something important. So now I will not write the limits anymore. It is implied that this is from minus infinity to plus infinity. Therefore, what I have is QFTF, QT, QT, I hope you can see this side of the board, right? All of you can see what I have written over here?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
Okay, very good. So what I have done is, I have started with this expression, introduced a complete set of states. By the way, there is another important thing that you should remember. This t is an intermediate time, because here, this is the initial time which I had set to 0, and this is the final time, capital T, right? So t, it is implied, is obviously that this is a later time, t is greater than 0, right? What is this t? This is an intermediate time. That means it is basically less than tf and it is greater than ti. This is an intermediate time. It satisfies this inequality. It is greater than ti, the initial time, is less than the final time tf. So we have this thing. What is this expression QT QFTF? This is nothing but K QFTF QT. And what is this expression? This is K QT QI TI. From the relations that we have proved just now, that this overlap is nothing but K. Therefore, K QFTF QI TI, so K QFTF QI TI is equal to integral dq K QFTF QT is an intermediate time and multiplied by K QT QI TI. So we have just introduced one completeness relation, one complete set of states, and we have shown that this K is related to a product of K's, and there is an integration over at the intermediate time over all the possible positions that the particle can take. So let us draw a picture for this mathematical expression and see what it means.
sir.
Yes.
Sir, for the identity test, we can choose any t. It can be also greater than tf. So, will it also hold then? I mean, t can be anything here.
Yes, correct. You're right. See, as far as complete set of states is concerned, you can put anything. You can put any complete set of states at any time. This time t can be greater than tf, right?
Okay.
It can be greater than tf, and not only that, it can be less than ti, right? So when it is greater than tf or it is less than ti, it means that this time t is not an intermediate time, right? But there is a problem. That would actually violate causality. It is not a causal relation. This relation is a perfect causal relation. Your relations that you should write, these are mathematical equations, sure. But these equations have a physical meaning. It tells you that the probability amplitude of transition from QI-TI to QF-TF is basically given by the probability amplitude of transition from QI-TI to QT, some intermediate position at some intermediate time, and then multiplied by the probability amplitude of transition from QT to the final point, QF-TF.
Okay.
So this is a perfect causal relation.
Sir, but we are not considering special relativity. So why causality comes in the picture? I mean,
Causality has nothing to do with special relativity here. Causality just tells you that your physical equation must be meaningful. If you go from this place to that place, then what you are doing, you are going from this place to some intermediate position, and then from this place to.
okay, sir, I understood.
See, the position is not important here. You can go to any position. The position did not be intermediate. because you have integrated over all possible positions.
Okay.
Position need not be intermediate. What is important here is the time. The time must be intermediate. For example, if it takes for me to go from here, from SNBO Center to my house, I start here at say 2 o'clock and I reach my house at say 2:30. But then I go to my house by going to a medical shop. So the time between 2 o'clock and 2:30, if I always try to aim that I must reach my house at 2:30, if I start from here at 2 o'clock, then the time that I go, the time when I'm in the medical shop, that must be between 2 o'clock and 2:30. This is not causality also. This is just, you forget about causality. This is just common sense. This is just a ordinary thing that must be satisfied. This time must be an intermediate time. It cannot be that if I aim to reach my house at 2:30, I go to the medical shop at 2:40. That cannot be.
Sir, that means it allows us to travel at any speed we want to. I mean, the particle can travel at any speed because Q can be infinite also in this case.
Q can be infinite, so you are absolutely correct. The particle can have infinite speed. So in that sense, this is a non-relativistic formulation of quantum mechanics. What the Schrodinger equation is a non-relativistic formulation of quantum mechanics. What you have learned in your earlier lectures, your earlier course, is a non-relativistic formulation of quantum mechanics. Schrodinger equation is non-relativistic. So what we are doing so far is also non-relativistic. You are correct. I will draw a picture now, and it will be clear in a moment. So what we are doing is, this is Qi, and this is time Ti, and this is time Tf. So this is my time axis, and this is my Q axis. And say you are going to this point. So you start from here, and this is your final point. This is your initial position, and this is your final destination. Right?
Yes.
And what we are doing is, this is some intermediate time. So it is greater than Ti, it is less than Tf. This thing. This is the intermediate time. And what it tells you is that the probability amplitude of transition of the particle to go from Qi at time Ti to Qf at time Tf is basically equal to the product of this probability amplitudes of transition. So from Qi, it can go to this point. This is some Q. This is some Q. So from Qi Ti, it goes to Qt. And from Qt, just look at that equation, from Qt, it goes to Qf Tf. So this is a possibility. But not only that, I have integrated over all possible Qs. So I could have gone in this way also. I could have gone to this point also. And from here to here. I could have gone to this point also. From here to here. So all these are my positions at the intermediate time t. So I could have gone here to this point at time t and this here. So by integrating over all possible Qs, you see that you are basically, to go from here to here, you are summing over all possible paths. There can be infinitely many paths. Right? And therefore, as Shom is saying, that there can be a path for which the velocity or the speed of the particle exceeds the speed of light, c. Right? Because to go from this point to this point, I can go to the moon, or I can go to some very distant place in the galaxy at some intermediate time. and from there I can go to this one. But if I, in a finite time, if I traverse a distance such that the speed of the particle is greater than c, then it is actually violating special theory of relativity, because nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. So in essence, when you are doing this thing, you are basically doing a non-relativistic formulation of quantum mechanics. A non-relativistic formulation, a non-relativistic path integral formulation. And why path integral? So we have not come to path integrals yet, but you can see that this relation, simple mathematical relation, tells you, or it gives you a picture over all possible paths. You have all possible paths. You can go from here to here, then here. There are infinitely many possibilities. So already you have a notion of all possible paths here. So that is why it is called a path integral picture, but still we have not arrived at path integrals today. I think it is a good place to end today, to stop today. We will arrive at the path integral picture in the formulation in the next class. So I hope you have understood this relation, this propagator, the notion of the propagator, and this relation. This is something very important. And how did I get to this physical picture? This picture is quite easy. You just insert a complete set of states at some intermediate time t. Once you introduce a complete set of states at some intermediate time t, you will land up to this relation. And the path integral formulation is basically nothing but inserting any such complete set of states at intermediate times. And that we shall do in the next class.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the motivation behind interpreting the propagator as the probability amplitude?
Well, it is, if you interpret, means you are going from this point Pi, Qi, Pi to Qf, Tf. So this is some transition, right? You are making a transition from Qi, Pi to Qf.
Yes.
So this is something like a probability amplitude of transition.
Okay. So is there some sort of normalization condition for the propagator also?
See, you will see what this propagator really means. You will see what it means. See, you don't normalize this. You don't need to normalize this. What you normalize is the wave function.
Okay. But if propagator is a probability amplitude, shouldn't it be less than 1 or something like meaningful that can be?
You will see what it is.
Okay. Okay.
If you don't like the notion of probability amplitude, forget it.
Okay.
Propagator is something which takes you from some position at some initial time to some final position at some final time.
Okay.
Okay. So if given a wave function at Qi Ti, it gives you the wave function at Qf Tf. And why is this an alternative formulation of quantum mechanics? Because in ordinary quantum mechanics, if I give you the wave function at Qi Ti, and I ask you the question that what is the wave function at time Tf, Qf at time Tf, then what would you have done? You would have simply taken the time dependent Schrodinger equation and solved the time dependent Schrodinger equation. You would have just taken the time dependent equation and solved it, and put the initial condition that your wave function at time Ti at position Qi is psi Qi Ti. This is the initial condition. And if you solve the equation, you will get the wave function at Qf at time Tf. But here, you see you are not solving any Schrodinger equation. This is also an important observation. We are not solving any Schrodinger equation. What we are simply doing is, the propagator, given the wave function at Qi at time Ti, at the initial time, the propagator gives you the corresponding wave function at Qi and Ti. You have not solved any Schrodinger equation. So the main problem in path integral formulation boils down to the following. You just need to find out what this propagator is. If you can find out what this propagator is, then given the initial wave function, you can find the final wave function by just multiplying the initial wave function by the propagator. You have not solved the Schrodinger equation. The question is this easier than solving the Schrodinger equation, or is this difficult than solving the Schrodinger equation? It turns out that for free particle, for example, we will do the free particle in the path integral approach. It turns out that for the free particle, it is at once you just take the Schrodinger equation and you solve it, and you will get the result in a moment. It will not take you any time. It will just take you maybe 1 minute to get the given a wave function. Free particle, it is, you know, it's a plane wave. The final wave function, it will also be a plane wave. But if you try to do it without solving the Schrodinger equation, if you try to do it by using the path integral formulation, then given the wave function at position qi at time ti, which you know it is a plane wave, it's a very simple plane wave. You need to find out the propagator first for the free particle, multiply the propagator with the wave function that you have initially to get the final wave function. To find the propagator, you will see that it is a long calculation. It is harder to calculate the propagator. It is more difficult to calculate the propagator even for the free particle. And if you go to harmonic oscillator, it will be more difficult. For the Landau problem, a charged particle moving in a magnetic field, you can once again calculate the propagator and do this same thing. It will be a difficult problem. It is more difficult. So the path integral formulation, the disadvantage is that it requires more labor to solve simpler problems even. With the Schrodinger equation, you can solve simpler problems in a short. You just need to solve a differential equation, a partial differential equation. But with the path integral formulation, it is quite difficult. It takes a lot of labor to find the propagator, even for the free particle. You will see that even for the free particle, you have to put in some amount of effort to obtain the propagator. But this is one of the disadvantages. I should not say maybe disadvantage, but this is a problem with this approach. But the advantage of the path integral formulation, as I mentioned, is that this path integral formulation, you don't need to work with operators anymore. This propagator is a number. So this is an advantage of the path integral formulation. Further, as we move on, this is the path integral formulation in quantum mechanics. But in field theory, you will see when you do quantum field theory, then you will see that this path integral formulation turns out to be very, very efficient. There, the canonical approach becomes very difficult. The path integral approach turns out to be very, very efficient in quantum field theory. Therefore, there lies the beauty or the advantage of having this path integral, having this alternative formulation of quantum mechanics, or the alternative formulation that we call the path integral formulation. Not only that, apart from advantages and disadvantages, what is more important is that it gives you a beautiful alternative picture of what is going on physically. It gives you a very intuitive way of understanding quantum mechanics. Because here you can draw pictures now. See, this is a nice picture that I have drawn. There is a mathematical equation, and you have a nice picture for the mathematical equation. So you have in the path integral formulation, you will have an intuitive feeling of what is going on in quantum mechanics. So that is why the path integral formulation is a very, very powerful way of understanding what is really going on. And it turns out to be very, very efficient in quantum field theory. Not only that, it turns out to be very efficient in many problems in quantum mechanics also. For example, when you do some tunneling problems, there also this path integral formulation gives you a very, very nice understanding of what is going on. So that is why you can apply this path integral techniques. These techniques are applied to statistical mechanics also. In wide areas of physics, you can apply. You can apply it in quantum mechanics, in statistical mechanics, in quantum field theory, in flat space-time, in quantum field theory, in curved space-time. Not only that, you can apply these path integral techniques in some theories that now people are trying to understand, for example, theories of quantum gravity, there also these path integral techniques turns out to be very, very efficient and very, very, not only efficient, very, very powerful, and it gives you a very nice understanding of what is going on really. So that is why we need to learn path integrals. It is true that it becomes very difficult. It is a difficult thing. Even if you want to solve the free particle, it will be difficult to solve the free particle using this technique. But you should learn this technique, because once you learn it, you can apply it in a wide variety of areas in theoretical physics, where this turns out to be a very, very, very efficient and powerful tool of studying such systems. So that is why this path integral formulation is very important, and one must have an understanding of this path integral formulation. Okay then, so let us stop for today, and so we will meet in the next class. The next class is on Wednesday. Okay. So let us stop here for today. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Sir, sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, in the integral, sir, here it is three integral, right? I mean, for dx, dy, and dz. I mean, there are three integrals.
Oh, so far what we have been doing, this is a one-dimensional thing. So you have only one spatial degree of freedom, 1 degree of freedom.
Okay, okay. In one dimension, but for in three dimension. So in three dimension is this will be a three integral, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then this q are Cartesian, or we can apply it for like other coordinates like spherical or cylindrical.
You can do that. You can do that. You can do that. This is an important question. In 3 dimension also you can do that. But it will be very difficult, definitely. Because it will be very difficult. What we are doing is, this is in 1 plus 1 dimension. One space and one time.
Yes.
But suppose you want to solve the hydrogen atom problem using the path integral formulation. Okay?
Okay.
There things will be difficult, right? There it is first of all a 3-dimensional problem. You have 3 spatial dimensions. So you have r, theta, phi. And there it will be more difficult to solve the hydrogen atom problem. As I mentioned, that even to solve the free particle, it is quite involved. So hydrogen atom problem, it is very, very difficult. In fact, Feynman, who developed this technique in his PhD thesis. So you can also look up at Feynman's original PhD thesis. So Feynman was quite upset because he himself could not solve the hydrogen atom problem using the path integral formulation. It was much later that this was solved using the path integral formulation. That the hydrogen atom problem was solved using this formulation. So doing that problem is quite difficult. It's very important.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I think let us stop for now today.